I'm about to give you the best sword for a fantasy adventurer. Now, if you hop onto YouTube looking for the best sword for a fantasy adventurer, you're going to be met with Shad from Shadiversity. He's going to be advocating for a machete type weapon that he'll inevitably come to the conclusion of being a falchion. It should operate both as a weapon and a tool. And Shad makes a lot of sense. If you are going to have a sword as a fantasy adventurer, it should be able to double as a tool and a weapon, while still having a spring temper so that it can stand up to the rigors of combat and of use as a tool, while still retaining a hardness that will retain a good edge and have adequate hand protection. But the falchion isn't the only sword that meets that description. In fact, what I'm about to show you makes the falchion look like complete garbage. Allow me to introduce to you the best sword for a fantasy adventurer, the Ginunting. But first of all, why should you trust me? I'm not Shad. I don't have 1.64 million subscribers. I don't have a huge production team to help me with my videos. I don't even have a beard. So how am I qualified to talk about this? Well, I may not have as many subscribers, as big of a team, or even as sweet as a beard as Shad does. But what I do have is 7 years of military experience, actually going through the forests with an adventuring party, living out of my rucksack, trekking dozens of kilometers per day, actually carrying ammo and weapons alongside me, including the Ginunting. And I'm not alone in this. The Ginunting has been the official blade of the Philippine Recon Marines for over 70 years, and they've carried it into every single major conflict that they've been a part of. From fighting militant communists in the north to Islamic rebels in the south, the Ginunting has been relied on to complete the mission and bring the enemies of the Republic of the Philippines to heel. The Ginunting has a proven track record that leads up to the modern day, and not just as a weapon of war, but also as a tool being used for cutting underbrush, vines, wood, anything that you need in order to bivouac and live off the land. And that is what adventuring is about. Moving on to specs, the size of the Ginunting varies from smith to smith, but what you can expect is a blade between 15 to 21 inches and a handle size between 7 inches to around 8 inches. This example that I have for you today is actually my own personal Ginunting that I made at my home forge. It has a blued blade as well as a blued crossguard and bolster. Now, I decided to use bluing in order to help fight against corrosion caused by the weather, as well as from my own sweat and oils from my own hand. This also has another additional benefit, which is light discipline, which is a very fancy military term, meaning it doesn't really reflect light off of its metal surfaces. How is this a benefit? Well, if you're trying to sneak around, whether you're doing a military operation or adventuring, it is far less likely for your blade to be spotted if you're trying to unalive someone or something. Now, these specs and features aren't entirely unique to the Ginunting, and much of what I said can also be applied to the falchion. But thankfully, the Ginunting is much more than that. Now, the two aspects of the Ginunting that make it the king of swords and best sword for fantasy adventuring are blade shape and hilt design. Now, the Ginunting has a flat saber grind on a absolutely thick forward swept blade. Now, the saber grind itself means that it excels in strenuous activities like chopping, while the thick stock that it's made from ensures that it is extremely durable. And that durability means a working man's blade that can go through anything that you decide to chop at, and a tip that can withstand both thrusts and tip cuts without fear of loss. Now, the forward curve of the blade itself means that the point of percussion is actually slightly ahead of your actual swing. This means that the cuts and chops feel easier to perform. This, coupled alongside the balance of the blade, means that it feels extremely lively in your hand, not only to flow with, but also to fence with and to use as a tool. Moving on to the handle, it actually has a hooked end, which is somewhat characteristic to all Filipino blades. This means that it stays very secure in your hand, whether you're hacking, chopping, stabbing, or whatever swings that you're going to be doing with your Ginunting. This, coupled alongside the swelling at the bottom of the handle, means that it stays extremely secure in your hand and is also extremely ergonomic. This is in direct contrast to the falchion handle, which adopts a much more European style, where it is essentially the exact reverse. You have a swell at the top, and then it reduces to the point where it comes to the pommel. In my opinion, this may be better for fencing and the traditional holds of more European style swordsmanship. But if you're looking for something to use as a tool and a weapon, you're gonna want something that helps to stay in your hand. Now, my own sword has a feature that is common in most contemporary Ginuntings, which are these finger grooves over here. These tremendously increase the ergonomics of it and really keep it secure in your hand. And this is most notable when you compare it to the typical European handle, and it's really no contest which one feels better and stays more secure in your hand while you're hacking away at stuff. Now, moving on to the construction of the handle itself, it is just as reliable as the European design, with many Ginuntings having full tangs and also being peened at the butt cap over here, in addition to also being epoxied through the handle. Mine, similarly epoxied, also has a 3/4 tang and a single pin running through both sides of the handle. I did this just for simplicity's sake, in addition to keeping the balance exactly where I wanted it to. Now, moving on to the guard, mine has a simple cross guard, but there are plenty of examples of Ginuntings with more complex hilts, such as a D guard over here, a blade catch on the back end, and even some examples I've seen with more expanded disc guards to protect even more of the hand, and even some with noggles that protrude out to protect your hand. And personally, I don't see anything keeping any blacksmith from making a Ginunting with a full basket hilt. But personally, I like the simplified cross guard because it's very low profile, it feels comfortable on my hip, it stops anything from getting snagged on my equipment if I have it on me, and it still offers great hand protection. The Ginunting has the durability to tackle tasks in camping and survivability that dedicated war swords like the falchion and other European designs just weren't meant to do. That ranges from chopping firewood, hacking through vines, butchering animals, and even prying open doors, which I have done with this exact model. The forward swept design of the blade means that it has the same chopping dynamics as an axe, but with 4 times the available blade. The ergonomic handle itself means that it's going to stay secure in your hand no matter how slippery the handle actually gets. And going on to the crossguard, it is just as protective as any European design, including the falchion, but with the bonus that you can actually tack on more complex guards onto it, including, as I mentioned, a D guard, a little blade catch in the back, and something I'd really like to see, which is a basket hilt on a Ginunting. And the best part of all, this is super portable. You can keep it on your waist and sit down without being jabbed in the leg or stabbed in the stomach. And it's also low profile enough where if you keep it on your pack, it won't get caught on doorways or vines or anything else that you're having to trudge through, while still being accessible enough where you can just pull it off your back and use it. You can use it at full range, mid-range, or even half sorting distance because it is so maneuverable and easy to wield. Building a character that has to specialize in dueling, have one with a 20-inch blade and a D guard so that you can get that extra bit of reach and hand protection when facing off against an enemy. Building a character that specializes in stealth, how about having 2 blued 15-inch Ginuntings that you can fit on your waist and pull out for double the sneaky violence? Want to build a character that's great at everything? Get a 15-inch blade and tack on a D guard, maybe even a basket hilt, and dominate in open fields, cramped hallways, claustrophobic tunnels, and even aboard ships. This will dominate in everything. Now, according to Kraemer from Living Anachronism, a fantasy adventurer only needs to worry about one factor when it comes to selecting a sword, and that is versatility. And the Ginunting is the most versatile sword from any culture, which can only point to one thing. The Ginunting, the best sword for a fantasy adventure, or so I think anyway. Do you agree with me, or do you have your own pick for what sword you think a fantasy adventurer needs to have on them? Let me know in the comments below. And subscribe if you love Filipino history, culture, weaponry, and are just a little bit curious about how they fit perfectly into the world of fantasy, then my channel is made for you. And follow me on Instagram at Filipino Fantasy YT. But until next time, this is Marshall, signing off.